to the She Leads podcast. I'm your host, Adrienne Garland, CEO and founder of She Leads Media, a global media company dedicated to the advancement of women leaders and entrepreneurs worldwide. I'm also an adjunct professor at NYU and Rice University, where I teach on the topic of entrepreneurship. I'm a mom to two wonderful young men and married to my best friend from college. Join me each week as I dive into raw conversations with remarkable, uncompromising, and inspirational women entrepreneurs and leaders. My hope is that these conversations and their advice will encourage you to put yourself out there and gain the visibility that you and all women deserve. We're all about stripping away the sugar-coated conversations and moving boldly in the direction of our magnificent dreams. For far too long, women have been conditioned to soften their words, modify their actions, and show up in the world to conform to outdated at best and harmful at worst cultural norms and ideals. Why? To keep those who are outside of the power structures from gaining power, prestige, wealth, and influence. This has prevented women from being recognized and respected as the powerful leaders that we truly are. The She Leads podcast is here to shine the light on all the incredible women, to encourage us to show up, speak up, and showcase the amazing work we do. Speak with confidence about the innovative and transformational thoughts that we have, and celebrate the positive impact that we are making in this world, both personally and professionally. So let's do this. Let's lead. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the She Leads podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by the She Leads Live 2024 conference. It's our 10th anniversary conference that's taking place in New York City on October 18th and 19th, and it is all about you, women, entrepreneurs, and leaders. So if you haven't gotten your ticket, please make sure to get it now. So today, I am so excited to welcome Mona Patel to the She Leads podcast. Mona is an entrepreneur, an investor, and a philanthropist. And she recently made waves, made a splash at the Met Gala by wearing this beautiful butterfly dress that was designed by Iris van Herpen. And her splash at the Met Gala brought attention to all of the incredible work that she's doing. And we're going to dive into what all of that work is today. But I want to start, Mona, by welcoming you, first of all, and asking you, how did you sort of strategize about using the Met Gala to bring such attention to the incredible work that you're doing today?
Hi, Adrienne. Thank you so much for having me on. It's wonderful. And again, thank you for probably sharing my story with your audience. It's all great women, and I'm really happy to be here. And just talking about, the Met, which was recent, a few months back, and I'd never imagined the post effects of what had happened on the night of, as it did. But when I look at my background as a founder, as a businesswoman, and just my journey in life, my passion for creating businesses, scaling them, as well as my love for creative things and, a creative outlet. And I call this as the other AI, is the aesthetic intelligence. And I have the aesthetics of, wanting to create beautiful things, be it beautiful interior spaces, beautiful mood boards, or even, design concepts. And when I got invited to the Met, and especially given this year's theme, which I loved, which was the Garden of Time, as everyone knows, and reawakening fashion, it really resonated with anything that I wanted to ever create for a big moment on a look. And the process actually was really tedious, and, it came with all the stress that it would come from anything that you do in life with, such high stakes. But the timeline was also very short. When I got my invite, I was only 3 months out from the day of the Met, end of January. So it wasn't that I had planned this moment. It was really very unexpected. And, it was just like, okay, fine, this is my time to kind of realize the vision if I was going to go to the Met, kind of those manifestations that I had with myself. and bring it to life. But I think all the years or 2 decades of being a founder helped me or prepared me over time to actually tackle it. I called it Project Met, quote unquote, for myself. And it all began with not just having the vision, but kind of having the best team to execute your vision. Like any successful business person actually knows, there is no I in teamwork. You do need amazing people by your side that can bring that first of all are kind of on board and aligned with your vision. And secondary, that you can optimize everybody's complementary skill set and bring out the best in them. And I felt this moment was a complete accumulation of all of that, like having everybody that shared the vision, kind of wanted to champion it, had the purpose, the cause behind it. And everything wasn't super smooth, I'll be honest, like anything else. It had its challenges, but we were able to kind of, and that's a much more detailed process, in 3 months, create something literally from something that I dreamt about, just sketched it on a brief macro level to actually going live. And another like fun fact is the arm piece that went viral too with the look, kinetic piece was literally something I dreamt of 3 weeks before the Met, and we made it in 3 weeks. It wasn't a part of the original design at all, but I just met the artist or heard about the artist that makes these sculptures and kinetic art pieces. He's not a designer. And I thought how I could incorporate that into my look. And that's how it started. But yes, it was an incredible journey. That's all I can say.
Well, I think that your journey to the Met is very much parallel to your journey just in general in coming, being born in India, coming to the United States as an undergrad and really figuring out who it was that you wanted to be. I'm so fascinated, and I want you to talk about this. I'm so fascinated that when you were young, that you sort of looked around you and said that you were not sort of getting into the spaces and being able to do the things that you really wanted to do because you were a girl. And so you took a radical step to open doors for yourself. And I think so much, we'll talk about that. I think so much of, sort of how you are bringing attention to yourself now is in opposition to what you were trying to do as a girl when you were young. So can you talk a little bit about that radical step that you took? And then I definitely want to dive into your whole entire entrepreneurial journey and what you're doing today to help empower women and girls.
Sure. No, Adrienne, that's an amazing story, just, and phase of my life, I'll be honest. And I'm glad you asked me this too. And this is literally, I had this epiphany at 8 years old, 7 to 8 is where I remember. So, you're really a child. Like there's no really ulterior motives. There's nothing beyond the understanding of your interpretation of your immediate world, right? So there was no strategic way, or I didn't think about, it was just the actual touch point of me seeing. And I was very in tune with my environment. That as a child, my mom says, is extremely curious. And I was very aware of everything that was going on. So I had this, she calls me like hypersenses, and just understanding that women were not allowed to do certain things, especially the state. And now we're talking, I'm not giving my age, but in the early 80s in India, in a small town, we didn't have TV channels. Like we didn't have a global TV, like, we had one TV with the VCR, black and white, but no live channels. So your world is the bubble that you see at your house, your immediate, family, and the kids and your school that you play with, right? Beyond that, I didn't know what was going on in the US or in the world. We're very well connected now. But back in the 80s, you would think I saw women with these long, veils, things that they wear, like in the sari, obviously, traditionally domesticated, and young girls like me, just probably playing girl things. And for me, it was like, I wanted to ride a bike. I wanted to go do, these high adrenaline sports things. And one day I remember my grandmother said, no, you can't do this. And my parents had never said that to me. I was always treated with doing whatever I wanted to. But my grandmother said, you know what? You can't do that. That's just for boys. Or you can't rollerblade because if you break your arms or if you scratch your face, nobody want to marry you. And
Mm.
that at 8 years old for me was just like, okay, fine.
Marry? Yeah.
I don't want to be a girl, you know, and I want to
Yeah.
be a boy. Like, there's nothing that they do different. They just wear different clothes and they have different hair. So I told my dad, can you just take me to your, like, hair place? And I want a haircut like you. I'm going to wear the clothes that you wear. And you're going to introduce me as your son. Like, I
Oh
don't
my
want
God.
to be a girl. And, my dad's always been a champion. Like, he thought it was a game or something, I guess. I don't know. And he said, okay, fine. And he actually did that. Like,
Oh my
I
God.
I remember very vividly at 9 years old, I was in a meeting. He's a developer in India, a builder, and I was on a site with him. And he said to his friend, and I'm sure there was a wink, wink, but this is my son. And it's still Mona. And I'm like so happy. That day, I still remember, I was like the happiest, like, yes, I'm a boy. And now I can ride the bike. I can do this and do that. And honestly, Adrian, that continued till I was 16. Now,
Ugh.
obviously, you're not 8. You're not, like you mature and, you get your period, you're all of this. And I still liked the comfort zone that I had no expectations of all the other, like, I thought vanity was weakness because that's
Mm-hmm.
how it's presented. I wanted to be successful, powerful, like my dad. So I thought physically I had to embrace all those traits.
Mm.
So, not to show my weaknesses, anything pink was girly. So I tried to stay away from fashion, pink, vanity. These were the
Mm.
things I tried really hard to just
Yeah.
be and maintain my strength because that I thought would lead to some kind of empowerment at a later age. And at one point, I don't want to get too much detail. I went to a Christian Catholic school in India, which was all girls' school
Mm.
from kindergarten all the way to high school. So, I never had boys in my day to day settings. It was only the ones that I played after school with. So, luckily, and there was no social media either. Otherwise, I would have been bullied. I was a weirdo. I didn't have as many friends
Sure you aren't.
because who wants to dress like, especially when you're a teenager, right? And you're dressed like a boy and then that you are different, right? You're not wearing makeup or you're not wearing, like, I still had sneakers on, I still had jeans and no makeup and no grooming sense. And I was still feeling very confident in my, like I joke, but my best accessory then was my unibrow and a little mustache that I had. And it was so sad though. One day, a girl in school came up to me, and this is when I was 16, and asked me if I was a lesbian.
Yeah.
And I had no idea what that word meant. And, sorry about that. Like, I didn't have that much broader exposure. And I went home and asked my mom, I'm like, what is a lesbian? And
Oh
she's
no.
like, who asked you that? Or who said that? And I'm like, well, it's in school, but first tell me what it is. And then she explained it to me. And I'm like, yeah, but this is not sexual. Like, that is the first time ever the seed implanted in me is like, oh my God, the world sees it this way.
Yeah.
And for me, it was purely about being able to do like role play. Like, I felt empowered to be able to do what I wanted to do without the annotations of, limiting myself and being a girl
Yeah.
and having this expectation. So from that day onwards, I would say, I told my mom, okay, I'll wear an earring, I'll do something. And, it evolved. I was never still into fashion because I still wanted to be like taken seriously. And I thought vanity was weakness till a very long time. It's
Mm.
only as an adult woman that I realized I didn't have to pretend to be a tomboy to be an empowered woman.
Mm.
And when I embraced that, that is when everything changed for me in the sense that, okay, I want to be a little vain. I want to be that is not going to take away from my intellectual capability. It is not going to be to get that confidence in life as you get successful and more. I would say as a woman, especially. And at that stage, I was an immigrant in a country like the US. So
Mm.
then the environment, everything affects you. You have social media. In my heart, I still will tell you I am in my true comforts. I'm still a tomboy.
Yeah.
As much as I love fashion, but it's a world I like to call it a fairy tale world for me. I thought I
Mm.
missed out on my younger days of life. So it gives me this opportunity to go and play a character. Like I literally think of it as a fairy tale
Yeah.
and I get to come back and still be who I am. So
Mm.
that's the fashion is an outlet. Met was that kind of moment. But truly, I feel that for me, it was the sense of being an empowered woman does not have to be represented by being a boy. But that was my interpretation as a child.
Yeah. Gosh, it's so fascinating listening to you because I do think that, it's this idea of we can't be who we are and get quote unquote, what we want or operate, move through the world as we want to because society puts these constraints upon us. So you found a way to live in both worlds, which I think is absolutely incredible, and feel what it feels like to, be a boy, quote unquote, and what comes along with that and what doors or paths are just opened for you when you are a male. And I love that it's a full circle moment for you that, and, being male, being female, being masculine, feminine, there's such a huge range of what that is and what that means, right? And what that whole definition is. But this idea of being able to be you in all of it, masculine, feminine, all of it is incredible. And I don't think that a lot of people sort of get to experience that or claim that for themselves because there is this like crazy societal pressure. And I do think that, in India, when you were growing up back then, and even today, right, there is very much roles. There are very much roles. And sometimes when people step outside of those roles, especially women, there are really terrible consequences. So the fact that you had these wonderful, open-minded parents is such a blessing. That's so beautiful.
Yeah, I call them my fortress, I'll be honest. And I did not realize this until a few years back had some kind of a executive coach self-improvement session. And she's like, Mona, have you ever asked your mother what she went through as you being that child and what she took that never came to you for you to have that freedom? And I said, you know what? I've never asked her that. Like, that's when I went back to her and I asked her and I realized, I sat down with her. I'm like, what was it like? Like, I'm not a mother. I don't have a child, but I'm like, I can only imagine like to have, things going on in your head or because they were born and raised in India too. It's not like they were progressive, I would say, open-minded. But when I talked to her, it seemed like they thought, it was a game. And maybe it was something that you wanted to role play with and you would eventually grow out of. But seeing how you were married to that as truly being able to empower you to do things, they never wanted to take that away. And she said, surely every immediate family, because I'm sure you've seen Indian weddings. And I went to my immediate, like her sister's wedding, dressed like that in like golf suspenders with a shirt, jeans. Oh yeah. And everybody was just looking at me like, what the hell? And I'm here so proud that I look like my dad. And, I don't have to worry about jewelry. I don't have to worry about makeup. And I was 13. And, I still had a period. I still remember this. I prayed to God, like, I hope my boobs don't grow at all because I want to be as athletic as possible. I want to be, running marathons. I want to be as agile, like powerful physically, because this was all more physical outward appearance. Inside you're still like, I was still a woman. I realized that I'm still a girl. And it wasn't ever about the sexes. It was more about what that gender could do.
Yeah.
As you're saying, Adrienne, like we're in a male-dominated society. We had this institutionalized approach from society that, women are domesticated. We're in this set of roles and men are in this set of roles. And there was no crossover at that time, at least.
No.
So I thought, okay, and more so stemming from the innocence of, I just wanted to be able to play. That was basically it. It started as simple as, but then it turned into being aspirational. I want to be like my dad. I see people in his office were mainly men. Like women didn't work. So I'm like, why aren't women not working? Like those kind of things. I asked my mom and, I always got the kind of satisfying answer in the sense, somebody has to provide, somebody has to do this, who's going to do it? And my question was, well, I don't want to cook and clean. I want to be in the office like that. Like, can I go do that? And my dad was, yeah, for sure. You can be a CEO. You don't have to learn how to cook and clean. Yeah, my grandmother was the only one. She's like, no, she has to learn how to cook. And that was where I gave in. Like, I think the family culture is set up that way. So I did learn how to cook and clean. But then it was a trade-off. I'm like, if I do this, can I please get to do that?
Yeah.
And yeah, it was so crazy. But I'm so happy and blessed that I had this fortress, which is my parents. They were rocks for me.
Yeah.
Not everybody does, and they're not blessed. Hence, I feel like I want to share my story with the world and be okay with women or other girls, young girls who want to aspire to be something and who are kind of suppressed and don't have this set of parents, right? Like, you
Yeah.
want to be that support for them, or at least somebody that they can look up to. If I can do it, they can too. So
Yeah.
that's my bigger story now that I have this platform. I want to give that back to the world, especially young girls in India. And it's a story of impact too for me.
Well, you came to the United States and went to college here. Is that when you started to really lean into this idea that you could sort of be everything, right? You could be this fashion forward person, but also be super strong, athletic, accomplished, and start the 8 businesses that you have started. I don't even know how you've done that. I need to hear about this. And also the nonprofit organization that you have, and also the community. So when did that sort of shift for you?
Honestly, undergrad, I was still, you're 18, you're still fragile, you're coming here. I had a non-linear path to success as everybody does. So it wasn't, as planned out. Hindsight is 2020. But for me at that moment, I just wanted to come to the United States since I was here the first time, I think, as a teenager. I've come as a child, but you don't really understand the differences as a country, right? When you're 8 and 10, you go to Disneyland and you're done. But as a teenager, I realized, very aware of the environment, especially when I moved, it was New Jersey and Florida with my parents, of just, exploring the freedom to express, the freedom to not being judged. There were so many, and this was my outward appearance, right? Not living here. I was like, this is truly a country of the land of the brave and the home of the free, right? I want to be here because I didn't want a prefixed annotation or association that I am so-and-so's daughter or so-and-so's wife.
Mhm.
So usually in India, we have our identities tied to your father or your husband. And as a woman, you don't and this was, again, things have changed. I'm talking
Yeah.
historically 3 decades back. And for me, it was like, I come here and I start blank because I'm going to be known for who I am,
Mm.
regardless of how successful or not my father is. I want to own my failures and I want to own my success.
Mm.
And that was the mindset that drove me, and obviously access to great education, schools that we have here.
Yep.
And I didn't survive as much as I think. The first 6 months, when you're born and raised in India, you have a different lifestyle. I couldn't take the cold. I'd never seen snow
Oh,
in my life.
oh gosh.
16 inches of snow in Newark. And 6 months, and I was like, I need to come back, guys. Like, there's no, and I was homesick too. The
Yeah.
accent is a problem. You're still, you're basically just teleported into this place without any, again, there's no iPhones back then. There's no internet. You still go to internet cafes for access to the web. So I went back and then I finished my undergrad in India. And that time I realized, I was more prepared, more well, and the world had progressed differently too. I moved here in 2003 as a 22-year-old.
Wow.
That time, I think I had my soul searching done. I wanted to move here. I wanted to educate myself further. And I didn't know exactly what kind of professional or entrepreneurial journey in success it would be, but I wanted to do something in real estate because my father was a real estate developer, even though my undergrad was in computer science. So I'm technically a nerd. I still am. But, being a hacker or animator was not necessarily like looked at very, and then we had the dot-com crisis, right? 2000 was the
Right.
whole bust. So no careers in tech were looked upon that way. I'm like, okay, fine. I'm going to follow the path my family has. And I think I grew up in that environment. So I know and have this understanding. And I got my broker's license in Florida, 2004. So literally 2 decades ago. And that's how my journey started. So I was still not into the fashion world. So I was so oblivious to anything fashion because
Really?
I was still thinking my accent is an issue. You're coming here, you have your own challenges as an immigrant. access is not there in certain places. You're learning everything from getting a credit score to starting a bank account, learning the counties, the geography, the roads. Like there's no manual of
Yeah.
what. And back then we didn't have iPhones, so it wasn't like the GPS is there. You're printing out, maps or play
MapQuest.
maps. Yeah. And all of these things still shaped me who I am. So I had this amazing journey ahead of me that I had no time to think about fashion or, I was still like decent, like I would say, as a decent sense of aesthetics, but never in the sense that, oh, let me go embrace fashion fully. Like that didn't happen until I was 35, to answer your question. Like
Wow.
really late, like last few years is when I've embraced that. And that's when Couture for Cause started. But no, like I was so deeply focused on, I had one goal. I want to be successful. And, I wanted to achieve certain level of success for myself, like in whichever way it meant,
Sure.
financial or just non-financial too. And in the journey, I met my husband. We've co-founded multiple businesses. And I feel like the entrepreneurial mindset is also a type of mindset that, for me, I've always been a founder. I was raised to think by my dad, in a way that you never want to work for anyone. So and again, she's like, I don't want you to overeducate yourself too early. I wanted to be a doctor. And he's like, no, you are going to like, and again, this is an Indian way, a traditional way. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. And I was focused is like, you control your destiny. And you control your destiny by not working for someone. I want you to be able to be, so as a very, like at 8 or 10, when I used to go to him, I knew for sure I wanted to be a business person. I knew I had to take risks. And I'm so blessed that that was, traditionally parents would like, get a secure job, get a husband, and completely like practical life advice, which
Oh
she
my
gave me was
gosh.
so, and it was hard. I'm not saying it was of course not. Like when you come here, you have to understand the value of a dollar. And I remember this very well. My first job was $5 an hour at a Hallmark bookstore at the airport. I had no concept of the value of money because in India, when you're raised and you're in a joint family, like kids don't work. Like here, at least you start with babysitting. You have some kind of, lemonade stall somewhere where you work so you understand the transaction of a dollar as a child. For me, I unfortunately was at 22 or 23 and I'm like, oh my God, like after working 4 hours literally on my feet,
Oh,
I'm going to make $20. Like, where is this? Like, how am I going to get to my dreams?
yeah.
And that's where I decided, you know what? I have to change. Like, I have to think about a business scaling. Like, that's when you want to go and dive into these books of how do you build yourself to build your dreams. And that is very, very important part or the first step of my philosophy of the mindset, which we'll get into too. But being a highest version of yourself, and every single time you have to put that effort in yourself, you have to make that investment in yourself to build those skills, those traits that you need to build your dreams. If you don't build yourself first, you can't build your dreams. Like you need a good foundation to build a building up. Like you can't put a 10-story building with no foundation. And I feel like building yourself is that foundation.
Mona, I love this so much. And like, oh my God, your father just sounds incredible. Like I am just in awe of him and how he instilled these values into you and he really guided you to be an independent thinker because we are not conditioned to be independent thinkers. We're conditioned to be workers and to go work for someone. And that's the quote unquote, stability. So he really taught you how to have an entrepreneurial growth mindset, which is so incredible. I don't know if you know this about me. I literally talk about it on every podcast. I feel like a little bit of a broken record, but I teach entrepreneurship at NYU at the Tisch Center for Hospitality and also at Rice University. But one of the things that we do in my NYU class that I think students don't expect is we do a lot of inner work. And so I say to them sometimes, like, I know that this might feel like therapy, but like, believe me, you show up in your business. And if you don't know who you are, like all your good and all your bad and all the things that, you get in your own way, all of that is going to show up in your business. So we need to we don't need to fix ourselves. We are beautiful and perfect as we are, but we at least need to have awareness so that when we, start procrastinating, or maybe we feel a little bit lazy, that we can figure out, are there other people, are there other tools and tricks that can help us get past this if we want our business to be successful? And I think so many of the students, their minds are blown. I mean, I ask them, like, what do you want from your life? And they're kind of like, nobody's ever asked me that. And so we do a lot of that. And I actually saw a bunch of my students last night. It was a lecture series with the CEO of MGM Grand, all of that huge hospitality empire. And I saw so many of my students, and they were just like, oh my gosh, I missed the class because I let them be who they are. And I think that that's something unique. I never thought it was, but it's actually something unique. And I want to echo what you're saying about learn about who you are, because that's your foundation to move forward. And you're proof positive. You've started 8 companies. So can you talk a little bit about the work that you've done to establish that foundation for yourself, maybe even some tips for people that are listening in? And then how did you really go on to build those 8 companies? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Adrienne, in a sense that and especially, still early 20s, you're still developing as a human. So you have your own evolutionary journey and growing as a human being, even though it's early adulthood, I would say. Your first time being independent outside of a sheltered, I would say, your umbilical cord is not cut off yet when you're living with your parents and you're being provided for.
Yep.
So when that first realization happens, I feel like right there is your first step of saying, okay, fine, I'm in this world by myself because I want to own my failures and success, but how is this going to look? And, it comes with, it's ups and downs.
Yep.
So you go in full blown. And for me, that awareness came in being able to read I love reading. And at that time, I guess we didn't have Kindles and access. So it was just going to the library and just reading, or Barnes and Nobles, because sometimes I couldn't afford to buy them.
Yep.
I just sit at the Barnes and Nobles, for hours and hours and read through every single thing that I needed to. And it's funny, there's a dummies for everything, the dummies book that people realize. And that's it was, dummies for real estate, dummies for building your credit, like dummies for anything. And that's how I started. And I think I didn't have access to any executive coaching and things like that at that time, but I had my soul, or my North Star, which is my mom. Like, she's extremely spiritual. And she's the one that's always helped me, even as a child, in the reflective work, more on the spiritual side of things, but also grounding you at the same time. Like, I am at the level I am today in life. I've still not forgotten my roots. And I've lived very dichotomous, contrast lives. I grew up in India, very, very basic. Back then my father wasn't as successful. So taking the local trains, the buses, even sleeping on the floor. My grandparents' house didn't even have electricity.
Yeah.
So there was no power. We went, and at night it's candle lights.
Yeah.
So, and open gutters on the street. You have animals, cows, everything. And from there to obviously, being in New York City, and it feels like a dream, or private jets, it's different. But being able to embrace both of that and still be okay if you have to go back to your roots, that is what I think my mother has been able to keep very strong. And I feel like I was blessed with mom and dad being completely opposite in that sense, right? One was extremely driven to success. And at any point in time, he's always there to guide you. But my mother, who's always been there, that don't let things that you own you, was her thing that changed my life, in a sense of highly consuming and being materialistic. How do you reflect back? Yeah. So that bridge has always been something I've kind of struggled with initially, but now I love it, that balancing act. And when I started my first company, which is in real estate, Mona Lisa Properties, it was purely like for sales, right? Investment in small properties back then. And this was 2004 and 5. And I don't know if people remember, the real estate, especially in Florida, was just into that bubble format until we had the crash in '08. So I was thinking, wow, I could do this. I can build these amazing buildings. I had an entrepreneurship opportunity where I just started my little, first little brokerage firm, like I didn't want to work for anyone, like even though you have to as a salesperson for the first year,
Yeah.
which I did. And then I was an apprentice with the developer. I shadowed him. I wasn't paid for that internship, but I learned so much. And that was one focus that my parents or my dad had said, like Steve Jobs says, stay hungry, stay foolish. And you always want to be the dumbest one in the room. That's how I felt. Like I want to learn from people. Like I want to keep my ears open all the time. And that's how I built the skills that I needed to be a successful founder, I would say, a business person. And then when I met my husband, I got married into medicine. He's a physician. But when we were on our first date, which I didn't think was a date, I thought it was a business meeting. He's thinking it's a date. But my question is, you know what? How do doctors scale themselves? Like that was the first thing. I'm like, I'm an entrepreneurial mindset. I'm like,
Yes.
you stop earning the day you stop working. Like it's just that. Like nothing as a radiologist, or it's different as a radiologist. I didn't realize that time. But if you're a surgeon, the moment you stop your surgery, your practice, unless you've invested your money, really, technically, you cannot scale your skill set as a surgeon purely as that narrow service. But again, we need those professions. We need all of that. But that can just tell you, like this is our first time talking. And I think that's what intrigued him into then thinking, oh my God, like, yes, I do want to scale myself. How do we do it? And I think from that point onwards, we were talking more about business opportunities, what we could do. And he liked the way I thought. And I guess, obviously attraction is there too, but it was mainly
it's like, who is this lady?
Yeah. And he's 6 years older to me. So he was just out of residency, working for someone. He wasn't happy. And I'm like, if you're not happy doing what you're doing, like, and I've always been taught that way, right? Like when you work for someone, you've put your destiny in that person's hands. Like literally he's controlling how your future growth is happening because you're following his growth trajectory, not yours.
Yeah.
And literally, I think I remember 2 or 3 months into us dating, and he had decided, he said he knew he was going to marry me the first time he saw me, which is really cheesy, but that is 100% true. And I swear to God, he always says that. And he went to my dad and asked to get married to me. He didn't ask me. But before that, we'd already brainstormed business ideas. Like he quit his job. We knew, and we were not even married at this point. So I say, we were business partners first, then life partners. But the ability that I think we were complementary to each other, what he brought in, which I didn't have much in my life, was consistency and discipline. One thing physicians know, and the residencies and what they go through, right, in life, I was completely an introvert, knowing, my early childhood, like nobody looked like me. I didn't have that many friends because nobody wants to be with a weirdo that dresses like a boy. So I was always okay with my personal space, and I actually liked it. I liked being behind a computer, liked being the geek. I hated at that time social interaction. I was a very antisocial person when I met him. And this is, mid-20s. And he's like, why are you always in the house? And I'm like, I don't like going out. Like people give me anxiety. And I always thought I was being judged in the way, because I never thought traditionally like, girls my age would think. So it's better that I keep my mouth shut, and it's better that I do what I do. And that's what it was, a storytelling to myself. Right. And I was only focused on growing my companies. And I think over time, what we realized, both of us rubbed onto each other. We have extremely complementary skill sets, and one business led to the other. 2008, if you remember, the world, financial crisis, and real estate wasn't an option. I just graduated from my master's in real estate from UF, and we got married. And I said, well, let's just start a business venture together. And it was our first imaging clinic in Florida that, again, failed miserably in that sense of us not knowing what actually it is to operate a business, physically. Both of us were still getting used to being married as a couple, let alone, the 2008 burden that just the world itself, brings in. And the access to capital wasn't there. The access to so many things. And we're both immigrants. He's also from India. He's just been here longer than I have. But it just kind of gave into the way of the entrepreneurial mindset that you need when you have your ability to take risks and your initial failures, and you fail fast, you learn fast. And that helps you or sets you up for success for the next one. And then it's exponential. So that was my trajectory. Real estate had always been the core of how I invest now. And it's more of a wealth creation tool, and then more of a creative outlet too, because I build spec homes and I love the design aspect of things.
Ooh, yes.
So the creativity stays. But my real strengths are strategy and finance. So I've been able to contribute a lot on how we grow, how we scale, how we acquire. And the skill sets he brought on was, technical with medicine, healthcare, if that is, and marketing, because he loves just talking to people. He's an amazing salesperson, which I am not. Anybody can know, like, Mona can't talk in that sense. I can't sell anything. I'm too direct. Like, I loved how you had the sugarcoat, podcasting sense.
Oh, yeah.
We are so trained to deliver as a woman things which I know my husband can say in the office that would be taken completely differently if it came from me.
Yes.
Even though the intention is the same.
Yes.
So, and I'm not one of those. I'm like, what you see is what you get. I will be direct and I will give you constructive feedback. As a leader, I have grown. I know my style has not been, and I'm learning every day, but I cannot sugarcoat things. I just can't.
I am the same. And yeah, sometimes the consequences of being direct are not taken well, but I do think that more and more people are being open to the fact that women don't need to sugarcoat things and we can tell it like it is. I mean, I do hope that, in this world that women's opinions and our thoughts and everything that She Leads attempts to do by getting us, our voices, our stories out into the world, that people realize that you don't have to be a certain brand of a woman in order to deliver your message. Oh my gosh, Mona, I'm just blown away by you and everything that you've done, that really you know yourself and you stick to your inner compass. And that to me is so very inspiring, because it's so easy in this world to, be influenced and try to change who you are fundamentally in order to, fit in or maybe accomplish goals. And so I know that you've created your Couture for a Cause nonprofit organization. What is it that you do within that in order to help young girls and young women to be able to say, I am who I am and I'm going to be who I'm going to be. And that's okay. It's like actually great.
Yeah, no, I think Couture for Cause actually started 7 years back, as I remember, as an idea. But I had this holistic, like a soulful conversation with my mom. And I say, as you said, even post Met, I've been able to be who I am and stay grounded. My life hasn't changed, even though it was an amazing viral moment, is because of her. Like, I'm blessed with that sense that I have these deep roots, which have anchored me and will always do. But her conversation was, and my love for fashion had just begun in that time. And I love couture because I truly think that's a form of art. It's just like a
art.
collectible for me.
Yes.
Like, men collect cars, or, people in general, people collect art. Fashion was that form of expression, because I feel like I already missed out as a child in embracing that. So now I kind of double down on it, if you think about it. But the couture aspect truly gives me a lot more fulfillment when I look at the process of how it's being made and what it is versus fast fashion. So I started collecting a lot, and I'm full disclaimer, I'm a Taurus. I'm extremely materialistic. I get attached and I'm a hoarder, and I hoard things. Like, that is just a known fact. And my mom said, when we all die, we leave our things behind. And, the quote I said, like, the things that you own have started owning you. I want you to learn how to detach. The sooner you do this, you will not regret it when you're 80 years old.
Yeah.
And that stuck to me a lot. And I'm like, okay, I'm not just going to go tomorrow and sell my stuff or not collect it. And I'm like, how do I convert this passion into a positive way, or something that's more impactful? And that's what Couture for Cause was really born out of.
Wow.
In the sense that if I were to collect, or any of this industry that's connected to couture, how do you take that passion and love that you have for it in translating it to impact? And I'll be honest, I had this, it's a selfish thing where I'm thinking it's a guilty pleasure and this helps me elevate that pressure out, right? Because you perceive, the perception from the world is, okay, couture is for certain, like, not that we judge men in that way, but couture is not needed in life. Like, that's a point where you reach where, but you've earned your money the way you have that right to indulge in whatever pleasures. And I say it's a guilty pleasure for me, but I was trying to convert it into something impactful so I don't have this negative storytelling in my mind, at
Right.
least for myself. And that is the true reason why Couture for Cause was started. Now, I had no idea about large scale impact. It wouldn't be like, the Gates and Melinda Foundation. I knew that. But I was true to myself that even if I can change one person's life, I have changed the world for them. I don't need to change the world.
Yeah.
But if I can change one person's life, then their world, their entire world has changed. And that was the storytelling that began in my mind, saying Couture for Cause is going to be a catalyst that is going to aid other grassroots organizations in India that are helping girls that I want to impact. Because I didn't want to create a foundation. As a business person, I know you need something that's scalable, that's sustainable, that, there are playbooks around what makes a successful nonprofit. And I didn't want to die. So I knew exactly not to make those mistakes. I knew I was not going to be a Red Cross or a UNICEF or United Way, but I wanted to start something that helps at least women like me leave a legacy or impact. And that's how it started, very small. And I partnered with Pencils of Promise. That was the first time because just kind of our paths intersected and I sat on the board. We were building schools in Ghana. But when I went on board, the story was they would eventually help me build schools in India. And that didn't happen. So I had to start Couture for Cause on my own as a 501c3. Before it was just it wasn't a 501c3. It wasn't a public charity. It was just a cause in my mind. Like I said, it was a catalyst. Like if I could bring a group of women that love couture together and we could create impact in some format to these organizations in awareness, in money, in fundraising, whatever that translated to. I didn't have a full business plan, to be honest. And after the 3 years with Pencils of Promise, I realized I could do this directly in India by supporting those grassroots organizations. And partnered with the Rescue Foundation, which is trafficked girls with sex trafficking that are reintegrated and rehabbed into society, their education. There's a blind school that my mom supports in the state I live in. So those kind of small things is where, because I didn't want to burden myself with overhead and the resources I didn't have to run a full public charity. So Couture for Cause is kind of an extension of just, my love for couture, but also impact and leaving a legacy. And now with the moment that I had with the Met, I feel like I have more people, more brands, everybody more interested in that. This is the opportunity I would want for it to grow bigger and have a larger impact. So now I'm thinking big.
I love that. That is absolutely beautiful and so needed. I'm so happy that you're able to use your love, your passion, and do good for women of the world, because I believe, and it's actually really funny, there's something that is on your website and I wrote it down. You said, I believe entrepreneurship is the fastest route to gender equality. And I could not agree with you more. I often talk about how I believe entrepreneurship is the answer for women to create wealth, to create financial independence, because once we have that type of, power, if that's even the right word, but once we have the means, we do good things with our money for the world, for humanity. And we need more of that. So I'm right there with you, believing that entrepreneurship is sort of the answer or the solution for solving a lot of the world's ills. And so I wanted to ask, do you also, you've grown these businesses. I'm sure that, some of them have been sold. They've been very successful. You have a lot of attention. Do you also help women entrepreneurs with how to think about establishing businesses, growing, scaling, and selling?
Yes, that's how the Oat Mindset community was born. And this was in COVID. This was my reflective moment of, how I can serve the world. Like, I think we had a pause moment in COVID, right? Like I would say March of 2020. That was the thing, is what is beyond just this impact, how can I immediately give back? Like, I've been blessed with so many opportunities. I'm grateful for everything that has come along my way. And I wish I had access to so many things that I didn't when I was in this country, but I can provide that looking back to other people. Not everybody's journey has to be as difficult as mine. If I can share that tips or the practical advice, and we all have to learn, like you can't learn how to ride a bike by watching someone. So we all have to have our mistakes. I get it. But you can obviously take so many different viewpoints, access to networks. And that's where Oak Mindset was born, in just basically being a community of aspiring or current founders that want to grow and scale. And what are those skill sets needed for building yourself and then building your businesses? And I had a whole architecture plan and everything for it. Unfortunately, I didn't have the actual bandwidth and resources. I went to school myself. I fell in love in traditional education, and I did executive programs at HBS, Stanford, and then got my MBA from MIT. So
Wow.
those 3 years that I was planning to build the Oak Mindset community, I just realized I only had 24 hours in a day and I could only do so much. So I had to be kind to myself in pausing that. But I feel like now, again, with the Met and the opportunity platform and the inbound interest that I've had, like, okay, what is this? And we did our newsletters, we did do all our webinars back in COVID. From March to August, we were doing so much. And once I started school, I realized, I had to study. Like, I wasn't available all the
Yeah.
time to do all that. So, and the brand is so much me, me sharing everything. It wasn't scaled at that time to bring on other women leaders, other thought leaders, other networkers, because the community is big. We were probably like 11 women that I had kind of one-on-ones on. And the newsletters went out to, I think eventually we built out to probably 8 or 9,000. But it stopped because as you grow and scale, I realized you need resources. And for me,
Yes.
that resources were very scarce in terms of time, energy, effort. That's how I call it the T. Not just
Yes.
money, but time, energy, effort
Yeah.
is something that's the intangibles that we don't think about. And we have to be honest to ourselves. So I paused it because my mindset, again, with the open mindset, I have the highest standards and I look at everything on the view of excellence. If I'm not providing at the excellence, this is the perfectionist syndrome that I have.
Yeah.
It's not to that standard, that I won't do it. And that's exactly what paralyzed me. And I think I'm going to write the next blog over that. But it was just this, our battle over perfection, over progress. Like, what are we going to do? And I've always been cursed with that, in that sense that it's procrastinated me at many times because I have this perfectionist and high standards and view of excellence. And Oak Mindset is a true example of that. But now I'm grown and evolved as a better person, better leader. And hopefully I can just dive into it.
Well, I love it. And I'm so happy to hear you share that we're all still on a journey, no matter what, right? No matter the success that we have, no matter the visibility that we have, we're all always learning about ourselves. And I don't think that we should ever stop. We're human beings and we're meant to continue evolving and being able to sort of see where we need help and where we need community is a beautiful thing. So I do hope that you, at whatever point is right, bring that community back, because I think so many women can be inspired by you and also learn from you. So many of us have just faced a multitude of challenges, whether we've come, gone to different countries or anything like that. The women's journeys are, just peppered with so many different challenges. So I feel that I could continue to talk to you forever, but I think that it's such a beautiful note to end on. And I do want to give people the opportunity to reach out to you and connect with you. So how can they do that?
Instagram is where we have the Oat Mindset community, which is live, handled. Now we have resources focused on that. Reach out to me. The handle is Oat Mindset. And also on my personal website, as well as my personal Instagram, I tried to, I'll be honest, I had multiple messages post-Met. I couldn't get to every single one. There were hundreds and thousands.
Yeah.
But I have eventually over 6 months got to 80% of them. So
wow.
I feel like if somebody is respecting and taking time from their time to text you something, it was just my responsibility to respond back. So a lot of people would not think that way, but I do. Hence, I don't have the time immediately, but I do get to people for sure. So, and then we will have the official announcement of the community going live, hopefully later this year. So stay tuned, I would say.
Amazing. Well, Mona, thank you so much for just sharing all of your wisdom, sharing your story, and just sharing who you are with the She Leads podcast community. I know that I have such a calm feeling speaking to you, which just makes me feel so great going through the rest of my day. But I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation and learning more about you. And I can't wait to see what you continue to do. I'm very inspired. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Adrienne. Likewise, I echo every single thing you said. And again, thank you. It's been an amazing conversation with you. I just felt like I was talking, like, not that we've met in person, but it felt like I was talking to a friend. So thank you. Thank you so much. I love your energy.
Thank you. This and all of our episodes are brought to you by the She Leads Podcast Network, the podcast network for women, by women. Thanks so much for listening to the She Leads podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support us, please share it with others, make a personalized post about what you took away on social media, and please leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. This helps our guests and our show to continue to gain visibility and traction. To learn more about how She Leads Media helps women to gain visibility, you can follow us on Instagram at She Leads Media, or you can head on over to sheleadsmedia.com. If you'd like to network with me and other amazing women, don't forget to join us each year for the She Leads Live conference. Thanks again, and we'll see you soon. This is the She Leads Podcast Network.